The private investigator's hands were shaking as he handed me the medical report. Not trembling like someone cold, but shaking like someone who'd just discovered something that changed everything they thought they knew about right and wrong. Mr. Hayward, your wife hasn't just been cheating on you, she's been slowly killing you. The arsenic levels in your blood samples from 3 years ago prove it, but that's not even the worst part. I stared at Sterling Moss, this thin man in his wrinkled brown suit who'd just walked into the diner where I'd been living on black coffee and whatever the waitress Ruby took pity on me enough to comp. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been Calvin Hayward, respected business owner with 3 successful hardware stores across the state. Now, I was sleeping in my pickup truck behind the loading dock of my original store, the one my father helped me build with his own hands 20 years ago. What could be worse than my wife trying to murder me? I asked, though my voice came out steadier than I felt. Sterling pulled out another document. His finger pointed to a name I didn't recognize. Dalton Creed. This man is her husband, her legal husband, has been since 1998. Your entire marriage is a fraud, Mr. Hayward. Every document she signed, every asset she claimed, every accusation she made in court. She played a 15-year con that was supposed to end with you dead and her $5 million richer. The coffee cup in my hand should have shattered from how hard I gripped it. But I just set it down carefully, the same way I'd been setting things down for 3 years, ever since the tremors started. Ever since Veronica started making me those special protein shakes to help with my condition. My name is Calvin Hayward, and I'm 46 years old. A month ago, I buried my mother Dorothy on a rainy Tuesday in Millbrook, the town where I'd built my life, my business, my family, or what I thought was my family. My son Brendan had just turned 14, all gangly limbs and his grandfather's stubborn jaw. My daughter Meredith was 11, quiet and watchful with her grandmother's sharp eyes that missed nothing. They were the reason I'd stayed silent when Veronica handed me divorce papers at my mother's funeral. They were the reason I didn't make a scene when she announced to everyone at the graveside that she wanted everything. The $15 million mansion my father had left me, both vacation properties, half my business, and full custody of the children. Your children deserve better than an alcoholic father who can barely stay conscious during a business meeting, she'd said, loud enough for my Uncle Frank and Aunt Peggy to hear, loud enough for my brother Dennis and sister Joanne to turn away in embarrassment. But I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol since Brendan was born. The dizzy spells, the fatigue, the times I'd collapsed during Chamber of Commerce meetings or nearly passed out while teaching Brendan to use a circular saw in the shop. Those weren't from drinking. According to the report Sterling Moss had just placed in front of me, those were from systematic arsenic poisoning administered by the woman who'd sworn to love and cherish me in sickness and in health. How long do I have? I asked Sterling. Because when someone tells you you've been poisoned for 3 years, that's the first thing you need to know. If you stop ingesting it immediately, years, decades even, the damage is reversible with treatment. But Mr. Hayward, if she realizes you know, if she gets desperate, she might accelerate her timeline. I thought about Veronica in her black designer dress at the funeral, not shedding a single tear for the woman who'd welcomed her into our family, who'd given her my grandmother's pearl necklace on our wedding day. I thought about Judge Harlan Westbrook, who'd ruled against me so swiftly it was like he'd written his decision before the hearing even started. I thought about my kids living with a woman who'd been slowly murdering their father while making them breakfast every morning. She hired you to follow me, I said to Sterling. To document reasons to deny my visitation rights. Why are you telling me this instead? Sterling Moss looked me straight in the eye, this small, nervous man who'd probably seen too much in his career of following cheating spouses and insurance fraudsters. Because, Mr. Hayward, I have a daughter. She's 15, and when I saw the photos of your kids at their school, when I watched your son trying to call you from a phone booth because his mother had blocked your number from his cell, when I saw your daughter leaving letters at your store that she hoped you'd find because she wasn't allowed to contact you directly, I couldn't do it anymore. Some money isn't worth earning. Some clients aren't worth keeping, and some men, even when they're sleeping in their trucks and have lost everything, are still trying to be good fathers. Those men deserve the truth. The truth. Such a simple word for something that was about to destroy everything I thought I knew about the last 15 years of my life. But as I sat there in that diner, looking at medical reports that showed how close I'd come to death, I realized something. The truth wasn't going to destroy me. The truth had just saved my life. Sterling pushed another folder across the table. "There's more, Mr. Hayward. Your wife and Judge Westbrook have been in communication for months. I have their text messages, their planned timeline, and proof of where your assets were supposed to go after your death. We can stop this, but we need to move fast. Your brother Dennis is a prosecutor in Seattle, right?" I nodded, already reaching for my phone. "Good," Sterling said, "because what I'm about to show you is going to need someone who knows how to build an airtight case. Veronica Hayward, or should I say Veronica Creed, made one mistake in her perfect plan. She kept evidence, and I found it all. 3 months ago, I was standing in Riverside Memorial Cemetery, watching them lower my mother Dorothy into the ground. The cancer had taken her quickly, 6 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. The doctors at Millbrook General had been stunned by how aggressive it was, how it seemed to consume her from the inside out before any treatment could even begin. My father Raymond had passed 5 years earlier from a heart attack in his veterinary clinic, surrounded by the animals he'd spent 40 years healing. Mom never really recovered from losing him. She'd built her whole life around being Mrs. Raymond Hayward, the small-town veterinarian's wife who baked pies for church fundraisers and never missed one of my baseball games growing up. The rain that October morning felt personal, like the sky had opened up specifically to match the weight in my chest. I stood there in my black suit, the one Veronica had picked out for me at Nordstrom last year, telling me I needed to look successful for the business. My kids, Brendan and Meredith, pressed close on either side of me. Brendan kept straightening his tie, a nervous habit he'd developed recently, while Meredith held my hand so tight I could feel her small fingers trembling through her black gloves. My brother Dennis had flown in from Seattle with his wife Patricia and their twins. He stood ramrod straight, prosecutor's posture even in grief, occasionally wiping his eyes behind his glasses. My sister Joanne was sobbing quietly next to me, her husband Theo rubbing her back in gentle circles. Uncle Frank, Mom's younger brother who still ran his cattle ranch outside town, kept his weathered rancher's hand steady on my shoulder. The whole town of Millbrook had shown up. That's what happens when you run 3 successful hardware stores that have employed half the town at one point or another, when you sponsor every Little League team in the county and keep contractors supplied through good times and bad. Pastor Williams was speaking about Mom's dedication to the church auxiliary, but I was watching Veronica. She stood slightly apart from our family cluster, maintaining what she probably thought was a respectful distance, but felt more like emotional detachment. Her black Chanel dress was immaculate despite the rain, protected by a designer umbrella that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. She kept checking her phone, typing with one manicured thumb while supposedly mourning my mother. Dorothy Hayward was a pillar of strength, Pastor Williams was saying. Even in her final days, she worried more about others than herself. She pulled me close just last week and said, "Pastor, look after my Calvin. Something's not right, but he can't see it. A mother knows." Those words hit me strange at the time. Mom had been on so much morphine those last days, saying things that didn't always make sense. She'd talked about seeing Dad waiting for her, about birds at the window that weren't there, about Veronica's smile never reaching her eyes. We'd dismissed it as the cancer talking, the medication making her paranoid. Veronica hadn't visited Mom once during those 6 weeks in the hospital. Always an excuse ready, a charity board meeting, a yoga retreat she couldn't cancel, a book club obligation. "Your mother never really liked me anyway," she'd said one night, adjusting her face mask in our marble bathroom mirror. It's better if I remember her healthy. But Mom had loved Veronica, at least at first. She'd welcomed her into the family with open arms 15 years ago, had helped plan our wedding down to the last detail. It was only in the last 3 years that Mom had grown quiet around my wife, watchful in a way that made family dinners tense. The same 3 years I'd started having my episodes. "Calvin," Veronica said, just as the pastor finished the final prayer, "we need to talk." Her timing was so calculated it took my breath away. The crowd was starting to disperse but hadn't yet, ensuring maximum witnesses. My mother's casket hadn't even been fully lowered. "Can it wait?" I whispered, gesturing at the grave where cemetery workers stood respectfully aside, waiting to complete their task. "Actually, no." She pulled out an envelope from her designer purse, the Hermes bag I'd bought her for our anniversary last year when I could still access my accounts freely. "You've been served." My brother Dennis stepped forward immediately, recognizing legal documents from 30 feet away. "Veronica, this is neither the time nor—" "It's the perfect time," she interrupted, her voice carrying across the cemetery. "Everyone who matters is here to witness that Calvin has been properly served. I want the house, both vacation properties, half of all business assets, and full custody of Brendan and Meredith." Aunt Peggy gasped. Uncle Frank's grip on my shoulder tightened. Meredith started crying, and Brendan pulled her against him, his 14-year-old frame trying to shield his little sister from what was happening. "On what grounds?" Dennis demanded, his prosecutor voice emerging despite the setting. Veronica smiled, and in that moment I finally saw what my dying mother had seen. The smile was perfect, practiced, and completely empty of warmth. Alcoholism, emotional neglect, and mental instability that endangers the children. I have documentation of everything. The divorce papers felt heavier than the shovelful of dirt I'd just thrown on Mom's coffin. Veronica didn't even wait for people to leave before launching into her demands. She stood there under her designer umbrella, treating my mother's graveside like a courtroom, her voice cutting through the rain with practiced precision. "I want the house, both vacation properties, half your business assets, and full custody," she announced, loud enough for my Aunt Peggy to gasp audibly. "The kids deserve a stable parent, not someone who works 80-hour weeks and drinks himself to sleep." "I don't drink," I said, stunned. The accusation was so absurd I couldn't even process it properly. "You know I haven't touched alcohol since Brendan was born. Tell that to the judge. I have documentation of your alcoholism, your anger issues, and your neglect of the children." She smiled then, actually smiled, at my mother's graveside, while my mother's body wasn't even fully in the ground. "My lawyer says with your history of erratic behavior, and those medical episodes you've been having, no court will give you custody." The medical episodes, the dizzy spells that started 3 years ago, right after our 12th anniversary trip to Napa Valley. The unexplained fatigue that 3 different doctors couldn't diagnose, each one suggesting it might be stress, chronic fatigue syndrome, or early-onset neurological issues. The tremors that made me drop tools at work, that forced me to step back from handling power equipment, that made me look weak in front of my employees. Veronica had been so concerned, always making me special protein shakes with organic ingredients she ordered from exclusive health stores. She'd started adding vitamins to my morning routine. Little white pills she said would help with my energy levels. "This is insane." Dennis stepped forward, rain streaming down his glasses. "Veronica, Calvin built his business from nothing. He's never had a drinking problem. Everyone here knows that." "Everyone here knows what Calvin wants them to know," Veronica countered, addressing the crowd now like she was performing. "But they don't see him at home, passed out in his study. They don't see the empty bottles hidden in the garage. They don't see the children crying because Daddy forgot to pick them up from school again." "That's a lie," Brendan shouted suddenly, his voice cracking with adolescent rage. "Dad never forgot us. You're the one who changed the pickup schedule and didn't tell him. You're the one who— Brendan, sweetheart. Veronica's voice turned syrupy sweet. You're upset about Grandma. You don't know what you're saying. Over the next 3 weeks, everything unraveled with a speed that felt orchestrated. My lawyer, Garrison Pike, had practiced in Millbrook for 30 years, but he seemed out of his depth against Veronica's Seattle legal team. The first hearing was scheduled for just 5 days after the funeral. Judge Harlan Westbrook, a man I'd never met despite living in the same town for 2 decades, presided with obvious hostility toward me from the moment I walked in. Your Honor, Garrison argued, Mr. Hayward built his business from nothing. He employs 43 people in this community. He's a pillar of Millbrook. A pillar who can't seem to stay conscious during important meetings, Veronica's lawyer, a shark named Harrison Cole, countered smoothly. He presented video from 3 months ago, a Chamber of Commerce presentation where I'd nearly passed out during my speech about supporting local businesses. This man operates heavy machinery, drives vehicles, and supposedly cares for children while clearly impaired. The video was damning. I watched myself on the screen, gripping the podium, sweat pouring down my face, my words slurring not from alcohol but from something I couldn't explain. 2 attendees had rushed to catch me when I started to fall. I was sick, I protested. I had the flu that week. According to medical records, you've had the flu 17 times in the last 2 years, Harrison Cole responded, producing documentation I didn't even know existed. Or was it food poisoning or exhaustion? The excuses change, but the pattern remains. Calvin Hayward is unfit to parent. Veronica testified for 2 hours, tears streaming down her face as she described my deterioration. She painted a picture of a man who'd become increasingly unstable, paranoid, and aggressive. She claimed I'd accused her of poisoning me once, during one of my delusions, and that she'd been living in fear ever since. He told me I was trying to kill him, she sobbed to the judge. Can you imagine living with someone that paranoid? I was terrified for our children. The thing was, I had said that once, 6 months ago, after a particularly bad episode. I'd been joking darkly after throwing up for the 3rd time that week. Are you trying to poison me? I'd asked, attempting to make light of how sick I'd been feeling. She'd laughed and kissed my forehead, told me I needed to rest more. Judge Westbrook awarded her everything in the temporary orders. The $15 million mansion my father had left me, the house where Brendan had taken his first steps in the kitchen, where Meredith had learned to read in the library, the lake house where I'd taught both kids to fish, using the same poles my father had taught me with, the mountain cabin where we'd spent every Christmas until this year, when Veronica had insisted on going to Aspen instead. I was given 4 hours to pack personal belongings under sheriff's supervision. Deputy Ronald Vance, who I'd known since high school, couldn't meet my eyes as he watched me throw clothes into a duffel bag. I'm sorry, Calvin, he muttered. This isn't right. I lived in my Ford pickup for 3 weeks, parking behind my original hardware store on Maple Street. My fortune was frozen during asset evaluation. My business accounts were locked pending investigation of financial misconduct that Veronica had alleged but couldn't specify. I ate 1 meal a day at Ruby's Diner when I could afford it, showered at the truck stop outside town, and tried to figure out how my life had imploded so completely. My kids were told I was getting help for my problems. Veronica had enrolled them with a therapist who specialized in parental alienation syndrome, though it seemed like the only parent being alienated was me. My calls went unanswered. My texts were blocked. When I tried to attend Brendan's baseball game, security removed me because Veronica had filed a restraining order claiming I was unstable and potentially violent. Dennis wanted me to come to Seattle, to stay with him and Patricia while we figured out next steps. Something's not adding up, he kept saying. This is too coordinated, too perfect. It's like she had this planned. But I couldn't leave Millbrook. Something felt fundamentally wrong about everything. The timing of the divorce papers at Mom's funeral, Judge Westbrook's obvious bias despite never having met me, Veronica's confidence that she'd win everything. She wasn't acting like a woman afraid of her husband. She was acting like someone who knew exactly how every scene would play out. On day 22 of living in my truck, that's when Sterling Moss knocked on my window with answers I wasn't prepared to hear. One rain-soaked evening, someone knocked on my truck window. The sound jolted me awake from another restless attempt at sleep in the driver's seat. A thin man in a wrinkled suit stood there, holding a manila folder against his chest to protect it from the downpour. He looked nervous, glancing around the empty parking lot behind my hardware store like he expected someone to jump out from behind the dumpsters. "Calvin Hayward? I'm Sterling Moss. I'm a private investigator." My first instinct was anger. If Veronica sent you to harass me, or document more of my supposed instability, you can tell her she's already taken everything. She hired me to follow you, yes, to document any behavior that might endanger your visitation rights. He shifted uncomfortably, rain dripping from his thinning hair. But Mr. Hayward, I found something else, something that made me quit her employment immediately. Can we talk somewhere private? We met at Ruby's Diner on Route 47, the one place in town that stayed open all night and asked no questions. Ruby herself brought us coffee without my having to order, giving Sterling a suspicious look before retreating to the kitchen. The diner was empty except for a long-haul trucker eating pie at the counter. Sterling spread documents across the cracked vinyl table with the precision of someone presenting evidence in court. "Your wife has been purchasing arsenic-based rat poison in small quantities from different stores for 3 years, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Always cash, always wearing disguises that she thought would hide her identity. Baseball caps, sunglasses, different wigs, but security cameras don't lie, Mr. Hayward. I've matched her facial structure, her gait, even the way she holds her purse on her left shoulder." He showed me printouts from security footage. Veronica at a hardware store in Riverside, 40 miles away. Veronica at a farm supply store in Bakersfield. Veronica at a grocery store in Milltown. Different hair colors, different clothes, but unmistakably my wife buying rat poison. The dates went back 3 years, right? After our Napa Valley anniversary trip. "But that's not all," Sterling continued, pulling out another set of photos. "This man here, the one she's meeting at the Riverside Motel every Thursday when she tells you she's at book club, his name is Dalton Creed." The photos showed Veronica embracing a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit. They were kissing in one photo, entering a motel room in another. My stomach turned, but not from jealousy. Something about the man's face seemed familiar. "They've been having an affair?" I asked, though even saying it out loud, that didn't feel like the whole truth. Sterling shook his head slowly. "Mr. Hayward, Dalton Creed isn't her lover. He's her husband, her legal husband." He produced a marriage certificate from Clark County, Nevada, dated August 15, 1998. "She never divorced him. Your entire marriage is legally void. You were never actually married." The coffee cup rattled against the saucer when I set it down. 15 years. 2 children. Everything we'd built together was based on a lie so fundamental I couldn't process it. "I also found this," Sterling continued, showing me bank records. "She's been transferring money to an account in the Cayman Islands for 3 years. Small amounts from your joint accounts, but they add up to nearly $2 million. The account is jointly held by her and Dalton Creed." "Why are you telling me this?" I managed to ask. "She's paying you." Sterling looked me in the eye then, this nervous thin man who'd probably seen too much in his career. "Because I have a daughter, Mr. Hayward. She's 15, same age as your boy near enough, and when I saw the photos of your kids at their school, when I watched your son trying to call you from a phone booth outside the grocery store because his mother had blocked your number from his cell, When I saw your daughter leaving letters at your store's door that she hoped you'd find because she wasn't allowed to contact you directly, I couldn't continue. Some money isn't worth earning." He pulled out another folder, this one filled with medical documents. "I had a friend who works at a lab test some items from your house. Items Veronica didn't know I collected when I was supposedly investigating you. Your protein powder was laced with arsenic. So were those special vitamins she gave you. The doses were carefully measured, Mr. Hayward. Enough to make you sick, to create symptoms that would make you look unstable and unreliable, but not enough to kill you quickly. She's been poisoning you slowly, creating a medical history that would support her divorce claims. I thought about every morning for 3 years, Veronica bringing me my protein shake with a kiss on the cheek. Drink up, honey. It's got extra vitamins for energy. The way she'd watch me drink it, never leaving until I'd finished every drop. We need blood samples from the last 3 years, I said, my mind suddenly clear despite the magnitude of what I was learning. Any doctor visits where they drew blood? The life insurance physical, I remembered suddenly. Veronica insisted I get a new $1 million policy 3 years ago, said it was important for the kid's future. They did complete blood work. Sterling nodded. I already pulled those records. The arsenic levels from 3 years ago show the poisoning had just begun. If we can get your current levels tested and compare them, we have medical proof of systematic poisoning. I called Dennis immediately. It was past midnight in Seattle, but he answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting for my call. "Dennis, I need you to listen carefully," I said. "I'm at Ruby's diner with the private investigator. Veronica has been poisoning me with arsenic for 3 years, and she's legally married to another man." There was silence on the other end. Then Dennis's prosecutor voice kicked in. "Don't move. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm catching the first flight out. Calvin, we need to document everything immediately. If she realizes you know, she might try to accelerate her timeline or destroy evidence." Sterling leaned forward. "There's more, Mr. Hayward. I have text messages between Veronica and Judge Westbrook. They've been planning this for months. The judge is getting a cut of your estate after your death, which, according to their messages, was supposed to happen within the year. How did you get their text messages?" "Veronica gave me access to her phone records to help document your stalking behavior. She didn't realize that access goes both ways." Sterling pulled out printed transcripts. "She's not very tech-savvy, neither is the judge." One message from Veronica to Judge Westbrook stood out. "Once Calvin's dead from his drinking problem, we split everything 3 ways, you, me, and Dalton. The kids inherit nothing thanks to the will I had him sign last year when he was barely conscious from the poisoning." I remembered that day. I'd been so sick I could barely hold a pen. Veronica had said it was just updating beneficiaries for insurance purposes. "We need to move fast," Sterling said. "I've made copies of everything. 1 set for you, 1 for your brother, 1 in a safety deposit box at First National Bank under my name. If anything happens to either of us, Ruby has instructions to take that key to the FBI field office in the state capitol." Ruby appeared with more coffee, giving Sterling an approving nod. "About time someone helped Calvin," she said quietly. "That wife of his never did sit right with me. Too perfect, too polished. And the way she'd watch him eat when they came in here, like she was studying him, gave me the creeps." As I sat there in that diner, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy to murder me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Clarity. The fog that had clouded my thinking, the exhaustion that had weighed me down, the tremors that had made me doubt myself. It all had an explanation. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't a bad father. I was a man who'd been systematically poisoned by the person he'd trusted most, and now I had the proof to fight back. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread through Millbrook like wildfire that Calvin Hayward had called an emergency hearing with evidence of attempted murder. Veronica sat with her lawyer, Harrison Cole, still playing the wronged wife, wearing the pearl necklace my mother had given her on our wedding day. The pearls that had belonged to my grandmother, passed down through generations, now resting on the throat of a woman who'd been slowly killing me. Judge Patricia Thornfield presided, a stern woman from the state capital that Dennis had managed to get assigned after filing a judicial misconduct complaint against Judge Westbrook. Westbrook himself sat in the gallery, trying to look unconcerned, but sweating through his expensive suit. "Your Honor," Dennis stood, having taken over as my counsel with his prosecutor's precision, "we have evidence of attempted murder, bigamy, fraud, and conspiracy involving the respondent, Veronica Hayward, who is actually Veronica Creed, and extending to members of this county's judicial system." Veronica's lawyer jumped up. "This is outrageous, Your Honor. Mr. Hayward is clearly having some sort of breakdown, making wild accusations. Sit down, Mr. Cole," Judge Thornfield commanded. "I've reviewed the preliminary evidence. We'll proceed." Sterling Moss testified first, walking through his investigation with methodical precision. He presented security footage from 17 different stores showing Veronica purchasing rat poison over 3 years. Each purchase was small, under the radar, paid in cash, but together, they amounted to enough arsenic to kill several people. "The purchases follow a pattern," Sterling explained, pointing to a chart. "Every 2 weeks like clockwork, at stores in a 50-mile radius, but never the same store twice in a 6-month period. This shows premeditation and careful planning." Then came the marriage certificate. Dennis presented it with a flourish that would have been theatrical if it weren't so damning. Veronica Summers married Dalton Creed in Las Vegas on August 15, 1998. No divorce was ever filed. Her marriage to my client on June 20, 2009 is legally void. She has been committing bigamy for 15 years. "That's impossible." Veronica stood up, her composure cracking for the first time. "I divorced Dalton in 2000. "Then please produce the divorce decree," Judge Thornfield said calmly. Veronica turned to her lawyer, whispering frantically. Harrison Cole shuffled through papers, his confidence evaporating. "We'll need time to locate those documents, Your Honor." "You'll have no such time," the judge replied. "We've subpoenaed records from all 50 states. No divorce exists." The toxicology reports came next. Dr. Marcus Flint from the state toxicology lab had tested my blood, samples from the insurance physical 3 years ago, compared them with current samples, and analyzed the protein powder and vitamins Sterling had collected from my house. "Mr. Hayward has been ingesting approximately 0.5 milligrams of arsenic daily for 3 years, Dr. Flint testified. "This dosage is carefully calculated. It's enough to cause severe symptoms, tremors, fatigue, cognitive impairment, temporary paralysis, but not enough to trigger acute poisoning that would be immediately detected. This is what we call chronic arsenicosis. It mimics many other conditions, making it almost impossible to diagnose without specific testing." "And what would have happened if Mr. Hayward had continued ingesting these amounts?" Dennis asked. "Within another year, likely sooner, organ failure and death. It would have appeared to be natural causes, perhaps liver failure that could be attributed to alcoholism, especially given the medical history of symptoms that had been documented. But the real shock came when Sterling revealed what else he'd found. Mr. Creed owns a company called Wellness Solutions, Inc., Sterling explained, producing corporate documents. They manufacture dietary supplements. Specifically, they created a custom blend for Mrs. Creed that contained controlled doses of arsenic, designed to mimic chronic fatigue syndrome and neurological decline. Here are the shipping records to the Hayward residence." "That's ridiculous." Veronica stood up again. "I would never. Psh. Is that why you took out a $5 million life insurance policy on your husband without his knowledge?" Dennis presented the documents. "Forging his signature, making yourself the sole beneficiary, the policy that specifically includes a suicide clause that would still pay out if Mr. Hayward died from complications related to alcoholism." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Thornfield banged her gavel for order. "There's more," Sterling said quietly, and the room fell silent. Mrs. Creed wasn't working alone. He produced phone records between Veronica and Judge Harlan Westbrook. Text messages planning how to rule on the divorce, how to ensure I got nothing, how to make sure I looked unstable enough that no one would believe me if I suspected anything. Dennis read one aloud. From Veronica Creed to Judge Westbrook, dated 2 weeks before the divorce filing. Once Calvin's dead, we split everything 3 ways, you, me, and Dalton. Make sure the divorce gives me everything so his family can't contest the will. Another message from Westbrook to Veronica. The restraining order is ready to sign whenever you file. I'll make sure he can't even get near the kids. No one listens to a crazy deadbeat dad. Judge Westbrook was in the gallery. He tried to leave, but 2 bailiffs blocked his path on Judge Thornfield's signal. Your Honor, Harrison Cole was standing, briefcase already in hand. I need to withdraw as counsel. I was not aware of any of this, and cannot continue representation. Veronica's facade finally shattered completely. She turned to face me, her eyes wild with rage. He was supposed to be dead by now. 3 years of careful doses, measuring every morning, watching him stumble around like a pathetic fool, and he just kept surviving. Do you know how exhausting it was, pretending to care while he got weaker, having to act concerned when he collapsed at that stupid chamber meeting, playing the worried wife while knowing I was causing every symptom? She laughed, a sound that made everyone in the courtroom recoil. The perfect crime, they said. Dalton promised it would be perfect. Make him look like a drunk, document his decline, take everything in the divorce, and then watch him die alone in that truck. But you just wouldn't die, Calvin. You just kept breathing. The court reporter captured every word, her fingers flying across the keys. And my mother? I asked, standing for the first time since the hearing began. Did you kill her too? Veronica's smile was vicious. Dorothy was getting too suspicious. Always watching me make your shakes, asking questions about your health. But cancer? That was just lucky timing. Though I did make sure she couldn't talk to you alone those last weeks. Wouldn't want any deathbed confessions ruining our plans. Judge Thornfield had heard enough. Bailiffs, arrest Mrs. Creed and Judge Westbrook. Mr. Hayward, you have an emergency order of protection effective immediately. Mrs. Creed is to have no contact with you or your children. All previous orders from Judge Westbrook are vacated. Your assets are unfrozen, your properties returned, and you are granted emergency full custody of your minor children. As they led Veronica away in handcuffs, she turned back one more time. The kids know, Calvin, they've known for months that Mommy was making Daddy sick. But they were too scared to tell anyone because I said the court would take them away forever if they did. Live with that. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. My children had been living with this knowledge, carrying this burden, while I'd been sleeping in my truck, unable to protect them. But they were safe now. And I was alive. Against all odds, despite 3 years of systematic poisoning, I was alive to fight for them. The courtroom began to empty, but not before several people from town approached me. Some apologized for believing Veronica's lies. Others admitted they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't known what to do. Ruby, from the diner, gave me a fierce hug and whispered, I knew that woman was poison the first time she walked in. Dennis gripped my shoulder as we watched them load Veronica and Westbrook into separate police cars. It's over, Calvin. You won. But I was already thinking about Brendan and Meredith, about the conversation we'd need to have, about the healing that would need to begin. The victory felt hollow, knowing my children had suffered, in silence, but at least now we could start putting the pieces back together. Veronica and Dalton were both sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Judge Westbrook got 15 years and was disbarred, his reputation destroyed in a single afternoon. The marriage was annulled since it had never been legal anyway. I got my kids back, my properties back, and most importantly, my health back. The arsenic damage was largely reversible with treatment. Dr. Flint started me on chelation therapy immediately, and within weeks the tremors began to fade. The fog that had clouded my thinking for 3 years lifted like morning mist burning off in sunlight. But the real revelation came from Brendan and Meredith when they finally came home. We sat in the living room of the house that had almost become my tomb, the same room where Veronica had served me those poisoned shakes every morning. I'd had the furniture replaced, unable to look at the couch where I'd collapsed so many times, where she'd pretended to nurse me back to health while slowly killing me. "We knew something was wrong, Dad," Brendan told me, his 14-year-old voice steady but his hands shaking slightly. "Mom would make your special shakes, then wash the blender 3 times with bleach. She told us it was because of your allergies, but it seemed weird. She never washed our dishes like that." "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, though I kept my voice gentle, without accusation. "She said if we told anyone about the special shakes, the court would take us away forever," Meredith explained, curling into my side like she had when she was younger. "She said we'd be put in foster care and never see you or each other again. She showed us articles about kids who got separated from their families." My heart broke thinking about the fear they'd lived with, watching their mother poison their father, threatened into silence by the very person who should have protected them. "We tried not drinking the orange juice she gave us after we saw her put powder in yours," Brendan added. "We'd pour it out when she wasn't looking or pretend to drink it. We didn't know what else to do. My kids had been protecting themselves while I couldn't protect them. They'd watched their mother slowly poisoning me and found ways to survive. 2 children navigating a nightmare while maintaining their school grades and pretending everything was normal. Sterling Moss became a family friend after the trial. The only private investigator I know who gave up a lucrative client because his conscience wouldn't let him continue. He now runs a firm specializing in domestic abuse cases where poisoning is suspected. He told me he's uncovered 7 similar cases in the past year alone. "It's more common than people think," he said over dinner one night. "Slow poisoning. It's the perfect crime if no one suspects it. The victim looks crazy, unreliable, sick. Who believes a stumbling, trembling man who says his wife is trying to kill him?" Uncle Frank, who'd stood by me at Mom's funeral with his steady rancher's hand on my shoulder, told me something that haunted me. Dorothy knew something was wrong. The week before she died, she made me promise to watch over you. She said, "Frank, Veronica smiles with her mouth, but not her eyes. She's dangerous, but Calvin can't see it. The love we have for people can blind us to what they really are." Even dying of cancer, Mom had sensed the danger I couldn't see. Her intuition, sharpened by decades of reading people, had picked up on what I'd missed completely. Dennis moved his family from Seattle to help run the business while I recovered. The hardware stores had suffered during my decline, but the community rallied around us once the truth came out. Sales increased by 40% in the first month after the trial, people going out of their way to support us. "You gave us jobs when we needed them," old Tom Brennan told me, buying supplies he probably didn't need. "Now it's our turn to help you." Joanne brings her kids over every Sunday for dinner. The house that almost became my tomb is now filled with actual family, with laughter that isn't calculated, with love that isn't poisoned. We cook together, no one person controlling the food, everyone contributing something to the meal. It's become our tradition, our way of reclaiming what Veronica tried to destroy. Sometimes customers who remember the headlines ask how I missed the signs. How could someone not know they were being poisoned for 3 years? The answer is simple. When someone you love hands you a glass of water, you don't check it for poison. You just drink. When your wife brings you breakfast in bed, you don't test it for arsenic. You say thank you. When the mother of your children says she's worried about your health, you believe her. Trust isn't stupidity, it's humanity. The fact that some people exploit that trust doesn't make trusting wrong. It makes them evil, but now I know better. Evil doesn't always announce itself with obvious cruelty. Sometimes it smiles at you over morning coffee, kisses you goodbye at the door, tells you it loves you while measuring out your death in milligrams. Sometimes it wears pearls that belong to your grandmother and stands beside you at your mother's funeral while planning your destruction. The tremors stopped completely 6 months after Veronica's arrest. The fatigue lifted gradually, each day bringing more energy than the last. But I still keep that medical report Sterling brought me in the diner that night, proof that the person who was supposed to love me most was killing me slowly, methodically, patiently. I keep it not as a reminder of my victimhood, but as evidence of my survival. Against odds that should have killed me, I lived. Despite 3 years of poison, I endured. In spite of a conspiracy that reached into the courthouse itself, justice prevailed. Trust, once shattered, leaves scars that never fully fade. But scars remind us we survived. And in a hardware store owner's life, survival is just another project. You assess the damage, gather your tools, and rebuild stronger than before. You learn which materials can bear weight and which ones will crumble under pressure. You figure out who belongs on your construction crew and who would sabotage the foundation. My mother never got to see justice served, but I think somehow she knows. After all, she tried to warn me, even from her deathbed, even through the morphine haze. Mothers always know when something threatens their children, even when those children are 46 years old and think they have life figured out. These days, when I visit her grave, I bring fresh flowers and good news. The kids are safe, Mom. The family business is secure. And I finally learned what you always told me. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The headstone next to hers remains empty, the plot Veronica had picked out for me with such careful planning. She'd chosen it right next to the woman whose funeral she used to serve divorce papers, the woman whose pearls she wore while plotting my death. She'd planned everything perfectly, except for one detail. She hadn't planned on me surviving long enough to learn the truth. My kids are in therapy now, working through the trauma of what they witnessed. But they're also learning what strength looks like, what survival means, what family really is. Brendan wants to be a prosecutor like his Uncle Dennis. Meredith says she wants to be a detective like Sterling. They want to help people who can't see the danger they're in. Dad, Meredith asked me recently, do you think you'll ever trust anyone again, like enough to get married? I thought about it for a long moment. Trust isn't about never being betrayed, sweetheart. It's about knowing you're strong enough to survive if you are. It's about choosing to stay open even when you've been hurt. Otherwise, Veronica wins. Otherwise, the poison keeps working even after it's out of your system. The $15 million mansion stands tall, no longer a monument to deception, but a testament to survival. Every room she poisoned me in has been reclaimed, repainted, refilled with better memories. The kitchen where she prepared my death now hosts family dinners. The bedroom where I collapsed so many times is where I sleep peacefully, finally, without fear. Dalton Creed's company, Wellness Solutions Inc., was shut down after investigators found evidence of other suspicious supplement blends sold to spouses of wealthy individuals. 3 other cases of slow poisoning were uncovered, all following the same pattern. All 3 victims survived, thanks to our case making the news. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Sterling Moss hadn't knocked on my truck window that night, if his conscience hadn't overruled his paycheck, if he hadn't seen his own daughter and my children's faces. One man's decision to do the right thing saved my life and possibly others. That's the lesson I carry now. Evil might be patient and calculated, but good exists too, sometimes in unexpected places. In private investigators who choose conscience over money. In small-town diners where waitresses keep secrets and offer sanctuary. In brothers who drop everything to fight for justice. In children brave enough to protect themselves when adults fail them. I'm alive. My children are safe. The truth is known. And every morning I make my own breakfast, pour my own coffee, and taste freedom in every unpoisoned sip. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and share it with others who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous threats come from the people closest to us, but survival is always possible. Comment below if you've ever had a gut feeling about someone that turned out to be right. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories of survival, justice, and the strength of the human spirit. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. Until next time, stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time.